Hello everyone, it's Leah here, and I just wanted to talk a little bit today about reducing overwhelm. And I don't know when you're going to be watching this video, but for me it's about week 10, I think, early May anyway, of the lockdown. And many of us are starting to feel really, really overwhelmed as we wait to find out this weekend what's going to be happening. And I think that uncertainty will always increase overwhelm, because overwhelm is really the brain saying, I want to protect you, but I don't know what to protect you from. It's too confusing. There's no definite threat that I can focus on and deal with. And it's very much the primitive protective part of the mind that I'm talking about here. And if you've listened to any of my videos before, I talk about this a lot. This is the part of the mind that would have protected our primitive ancestors from things like tigers, rival cave people wanting to attack them. And so this part of the mind is very much set up to deal with primitive physical threat to our survival, and it's really, really good at that. But of course, if you're a primitive cave person and you are being chased by a tiger, the threat's really clear. It's really obvious not only what the threat is, but where it is and probably how best to deal with it. But we still have that part of the mind with us today, and it's still desperately trying to protect us. And so whenever there's any kind of threat, it will start to be triggered and it will start to want to try and protect us. And the changes and the actual threat presented by COVID-19 are no exception. The trouble is that when it's an emotional threat, a social threat, a financial threat, the brain will still want to protect, it will still be triggered, but actually its resources, its techniques that it likes to use aren't quite so helpful. And of course, although COVID is a physical threat, it's not very definite, is it? It's, we can't see it. We don't know when we're going to come across it. We don't know how it will affect us. And it's affecting us in lots of ways that aren't really, really very obvious. So we've got this kind of disconnect where we've got this threat, but the brain can't quite get a handle of it. So that will always cause a feeling of overwhelm and certainly a lack of safety within us. Then when we add in our stress bucket, and you may or may not have heard me talk about this before, but we can use the idea of a stress bucket as a way of kind of imagining how all those little worries, all those little emotional thoughts that we have, how they affect the brain. Because if you can imagine that you've got a stress bucket and every emotional thought that you have goes into that stress bucket and waits there until the brain can process it, then every time you worry, every time you kind of ruminate over negative things from the past, and every time you're kind of having a negative emotional thought about something that's happening at that moment, that all goes into that bucket, and it fills and it fills and it fills. And the more full that bucket is, the more the brain, the primitive protective brain, feels that there's threat to respond to. But actually in itself, the stuff in the bucket is not like one definite thing. It's not like one big tiger there that the brain can respond to. It's a lot of little worries, little things, maybe big worries that have happened repeatedly, but it's all sorts of things. And so the brain just doesn't know where to start with it. So when we're getting into that situation where we've had a lot of things to worry about, we've had a lot going on, and there are things that that we're finding threatening in one way or another, that primitive protective mind is wanting to step in, but it's struggling to find the enemy, if you like. And so it will try all its techniques, or its favourite techniques, if you like, to protect you. So when the primitive mind is responding to physical threat, it tends to use three major categories of response. So there's fight, flight, and freeze. And when we're under the kind of threat and the kind of overwhelm that we're in at the moment, it's no different. The primitive protective part of the mind will still use those tactics, but they just might look very different. And it may be that, one person will, have the freeze response mostly. Another person might have the fight response mostly. Another person might have the flee or the flight response, or it might be a mixture, or it might change. You might start off with one and then move to another and then move to another. So freeze, that's exactly as it sounds. So for the primitive ancestor who's being chased down by a tiger, if it seems like maybe sort of staying still, hiding, might mean that the tiger doesn't spot you, and that you kind of get away safely from, never having been noticed in the first place, then that's a really good response, or a good result rather. And so the primitive mind may try freeze. So you'll feel that as, not wanting to do anything, not wanting to get involved, maybe even kind of emotionally skating over what's going on, pretending it's not true. It might literally be kind of staying in the safety of your cave. So, not wanting to get out of bed in the morning, just kind of wanting to do something that's very soothing. So our equivalent is kind of, knowing that we've got all this stuff to do and maybe scrolling through Facebook. It might be that our motivation's affected. So we really enjoy exercise, but we can't be bothered. Can't be bothered to go there. Fueling and eating is part of this response, I'm afraid to say, as well, because if you imagine the primitive ancestors in their cave, hiding out and waiting for the threat to go, if they had access to high energy foods, sugary, fatty foods, then they would probably be fueling up, because they wouldn't know whether the stores would be available when they were going out. That's not a good way of saying it. Let me explain it in a different way. When they were going back out, when everything seemed like it calmed down, they wouldn't know for sure that it was going to be calm, and they might need those stores, those resources, to be able to survive. And they might be so busy trying to survive, they might not be able to find food. I don't know if that makes sense, but makes sense to me. So we tend to, under these kind of circumstances, fuel up, and that's why the corona wait is happening for most people. The fight, that's another option, isn't it? So for the primitive ancestor, if the tiger has cornered them and they feel like they've got no means of escape, then and no means to do any of the other things, then what they might do is to respond by fighting their way out. So and that's a risky thing, but it's worth it under certain circumstances. And if your brain is perceiving that that's the best option for you, you might find yourself being quite angry, whether that's angry at the government, unable to kind of let that topic go. We've all at least known other people like this, where they get triggered into a certain red flag topic, and they just, up goes the anger, and they're relentlessly talking about their opinion about it, and not being able to kind of drop it and move on to another topic, for instance. It might be just that your tolerance level is down. So, you're snapping at the kids, you're snapping at your partner, or, actually the fight response also includes a kind of sense of trying to fix things. So, the fight response is like, I'm going to sort this out. I'm going to, use my kind of power and might, and try and fix this in some way. So you might find that you're very focused on fixing things. So trying to minimize everything you can about infection, making sure that you've got all of the gloves, and that you're kind of in control of how you're doing things. And or it might just be about structure. It might be that you're having a very specific structure to your day, or a specific way of doing things, and that you don't like when that's changed. It makes you feel anxious, or more overwhelmed or stressed. And it could be actually almost like a hyper motivation. So like relentlessly doing a certain form of fitness, or just completely immersing yourself in your business, just relentlessly trying to keep your work going, keep your job, or to keep your business running, to the exclusion of all else, for instance. It could be the flight side of things. So so for primitive ancestor, that would be kind of running away from the threat. For us, it's kind of that, but it's It can be much subtler than that. So it's kind of, trying to escape reality. So it could be running away in the sense of kind of retreating into your mind. It could be retreating into kind of TV programs, hobbies. It could be literally just keeping yourself busy, keeping yourself away from your own mind. So never really being able to stop, kind of always wanting to be doing something, fixing something, sorting something. It could be not being able to kind of settle into anything, not being able to focus, never really being able to stay on one task, always kind of hopping about, kind of moving about, never completing, never feeling kind of satisfied or relaxed. This is all about the fly. We could literally be just wanting to pack your bags and get out. That, it could just be a feeling rather than an action. But yeah. So I'm noticing the time. I always go on too long with these things. I'm just passionate about all this knowledge and understanding of the brain that I've got. I want to tell you everything. So I hope that's sort of helping to make sense. And I want to give you some fantastic, amazing sage bit of advice that you can walk away from this video and instantly all of your overwhelm is going to be gone. You're going to be feeling amazing again instantly. And I'm sorry I can't do that. I'd love to, but I can't. I can definitely really, really help in lots of ways though. So I'm going to give you what I think is a very good tip of something you can start to try and do for yourself and notice that can really help to bring down that sense of overwhelm. And obviously what I'd really like you to do is book in to come and work with me so I can really get my teeth into helping you with the specifics that are affecting you. But if you want a general tip, there's something really important to understand. The way that we think is one of the major things that triggers this primitive protective part of the mind. And without really realizing it, we're often seeding information to this primitive part of the mind that's making it behave the way that it is. It's making us perceive this threat and respond in this way to the threat. So, so if we can look at how we're doing that and change what we're doing, that can be incredibly powerful to start to turn that overwhelm around. Anything that you can do to help yourself feel more in control is obviously a really helpful thing, because the brain is not able to pinpoint threats. So there's two ways of looking at this. We can either find things that will actually make us feel like we're reducing the threat, which is why things like, staying safe with masks or following the lockdown rules, things like that can be really, really helpful, of course. But actually, if we can minimise the perception of threat for that part of the brain, and particularly the kind of nebulous threats, the things that we can't control by, action, then that can be really, really helpful too. So one of the things that happens is when we're feeling really overwhelmed, we start to kind of think about things in a different way. So let's say you've got a daily dog walk that you do, for example, and it's something that you normally really, really enjoy. But now you're starting to feel overwhelmed by everything, work's piling on top of you, you're struggling to balance everything with, homeschooling the kids, etc., etc. And you're starting to find that even the dog walk that you've always loved, you can't even be bothered to do. And you can kind of, put this across the board with anything really, hobbies, things that you've often felt motivated for in the past, different types of exercise, etc. But you're not feeling like you can be bothered anymore. If you have to think about how your thought processes are around that particular thing, so using this dog walk example, I can bet your bottom dollar, bet my bottom dollar, that there's something going on like this. You're starting to think, oh God, I've got to walk the dog later, but I'm running out of time. I've still got 20 things to do on my to-do list. And then I need to sort out the kids' tea, and then it's going to be late, and and it's starting to rain, and I'm hoping that nobody looks at me, and you get the point. So we're starting to have negative thoughts around the dog walk, which is coming from the fact that we're already feeling overwhelmed. So we've already got stuff kind of backing up and making us feel overwhelmed. And then we're adding to it. But what we're doing this time is we're giving the brain that specific threat. So what you're really saying when you're saying, oh God, the dog walk is going to be a chore, it's going to be difficult, is you're saying to your primitive mind, God, that's a really tough, awful thing for me to do. And it in effect goes, aha, well, I come to the rescue. I can help you with this thing. And because it's it's the good guy. It's not the bad guy. It's trying to help you. It wants to protect you. Just hasn't been able to find a way of doing that. And so what it will do is it will say, right, I'm going to keep you away from that dog walk. And it's not doing this. It's not a person, of course. But in effect, it's saying, right, we're going to drop your motivation down really low. We're going to kind of make you feel really lethargic. We're going to give you lots of distractions, other things to do first so that you don't do that dog walk. And we're going to keep you away from it. And that's why you find yourself kind of not really wanting to do it, getting distracted, doing other things and thinking, well, why am I doing even the things that I like? And those things, I'm not going to say it's easy to fix, because actually a lot of this stuff is going on under the radar, and you're not going to just be able to fix it all by changing how you think. And that's why hypnotherapy can be so powerful, of course, because we're kind of going under the radar and we're changing this underneath stuff. But if you're not doing that, then one of the things you can do to help yourself is notice how you're thinking about it. So if you are thinking about the dog walk and you are saying to yourself, well, I'm really looking forward to the dog walk because I love the feeling of the sun on my skin. I can't wait to get out into the woodland nearby and see the trees and hear the birds and whatever it might be, whatever it is you genuinely enjoy about the dog walk. Because then your brain's seeing a different side of the story. It's not seeing that dog walk as a threat. It's going to see it as something that you want to do. And I know these things are easier said than done. It's not about things being perfect. But also it might be that you're struggling with motivation and overwhelm about things that actually you don't enjoy, and that you're going to struggle to find things that are positive to think about it. So let's say you've got a really onerous task for your job. I don't know, say you've got to do your accounts. That's onerous for me anyway. So you got to fill in a big spreadsheet or something, and it's boring as hell to you. It's like your worst nightmare. Your natural thoughts are going to be like, well, exactly as I've just said, this is awful. It's going to be, horrendous. It's going to take so long. I'm going to be so bored. And you might not be able to say to yourself realistically in a way that your brain's going to believe, oh, I'm really looking forward to entering these numbers into the cells. I get such joy from seeing, the figures go on the paper. Yeah, probably not true. But what probably is true is that you're looking forward to getting it done. There's probably some kind of benefit to you to having got that done. And that's the kind of thing you want to focus on. So if you're noticing yourself kind of saying something negative in your mind about it, just starting to say, okay, well, actually, I'm really looking forward to getting that done because I can relax. What is the benefit to you of getting it done? I can relax. I can let go of it. I don't have to have it on my shoulders anymore. I can feel free. So give your mind something positive to hold on to. Even doing the dishes. I'm really looking forward to having clear worktops so I can breathe and it all feels spacious in the kitchen again, instead of, oh God, I hate dishes. Why do I have to do everything? Everything's on top of me. So this is rather a long video, way longer than I planned to do. So I'm going to say goodbye. But I really appreciate you listening, especially if you're still with me. Any questions, as always, send them through. Let me know if you'd like to book in and work with me. But otherwise, stay really, really safe, and I will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.